Hello there. Today I'm going to be playing Oblivion Remastered, but with one slight difference. That's right, boys. In this video, I'm attempting to complete Oblivion's main questline with a single hit point, but that's not all. I also can't enchant items, make potions, or change out of the starting prisoner rags. Ever. To survive, we'll need to min-max our stats, find the perfect weapons, the most powerful spells, the best follower, and abuse every mechanic we can. But, perhaps most important of all, resist the urge to punch a hole through my monitor. In a world where fucking everything is trying to kill you, having 1 HP means they usually succeed. Can we become the champion of Cyrodiil? Or will Daedra, gators, mud crabs, giant demons, lightning, rats, gravity, trees, fireballs, and a gust of wind finish the job? Time to find out. Time to big in. Playing Oblivion with 1 HP means that literally anything can end your existence at any moment. In a world where stubbing your toe means instant death, only one man is stupid enough for the job. Gentlemen, Steve Buscemi.
How do you do, fellow kids?
But he's a wood elf. Like every hero story, our journey begins in prison, where I immediately walk straight into a wall for 3 real-life hours. Riveting gameplay, I know. The only indication this was working was the occasional... After chain-smoking 23 cigarettes and polishing off 2 bottles of Jim Beam, I returned to find my sneak skill at 100 and my liver incredibly inflamed. Getting sneak to 100 before even starting the tutorial is imperative. This is because the tutorial on 1 HP is less like a tutorial and more like Oblivion's version of the first time you meet that Margit fellow. At 100, will become much harder to detect, unlock 3 times and 8 times damage multipliers, and all sneak attacks will ignore armor. With that out of the way, it was finally time to start playing the game. Some strange man walked into my cell, so I asked him who he was. Turns out, he's the Emperor. And he'd been having some type of sexually perverted dreams of Steve Buscemi. Honestly, fair enough. We follow them into the sewers and are immediately set upon by 3 assassins. I employed the ancient technique called being a coward and looted a dead blade for a katana. On paper, this challenge seemed fun and exciting. In practice, the first rat I encountered immediately severed my carotid artery. The first real test we have to face is killing these blood-hungry rats with a katana that deals this much damage. My entire strategy revolved around literally wall-banging the rats into submission, occasionally landing a crit. If I got even remotely greedy, the rats would burst through and maul me like a junkie who thought I stole his glass pipe. After 10 straight minutes of exploiting the elderly and exactly 9 deaths, I landed another crit to take out the final rodent. This early encounter might be enough to traumatize a lesser man, but not me, because I had a plan. One that involved never doing that shit again. Gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to the rusty iron bow and the rusty iron dagger. With these new weapons, I finally understood how the Chinese must have felt when they invented gunpowder. You see, the reason we need both the bow and the dagger together is for the damage multipliers. Normally, bow sneak attacks cap at a 3 times multiplier, but if you fire an arrow and quickly switch to your dagger before impact, the game registers it as a dagger hit, granting an 8 times multiplier instead. In simpler terms, I now had a 10-inch peanut. This wasn't without its drawbacks though. If you fucked up the timing of the switch, it would permanently break your bow, and the only way to fix it was to reload your save. This had a habit of happening at precisely the worst times. After murdering some rats, I shot some goblins in the face, crushed others with conveniently placed logs, brushed my ankle against said logs, leading to total organ failure, killed a witch, and then eventually regrouped with the Emperor. They asked me to do one job and one job only.
Guard him with your life.
With the Emperor dead, we could move on to more important things, like choosing my class. Our main priority will be to deal damage from a distance, and the further the distance, the less chance of internal combustion. Much like Rome, all roads in a Bethesda game lead to Stealth Archer. The essential skills: marksman, conjuration, and athletics, with bonuses to intelligence and agility. I named it 40-year-old virgin because, much like one, the moment anything touches me, it's over in seconds. I also chose the Atronach birth sign, giving us a 50% chance to absorb spells, meaning a fireball only had a 1 in 2 chance of burning me alive. Progress. We fought through the rest of the sewers, dying only twice, a new record, and finally made it out of the tutorial. Immediately upon leaving the tutorial, I realized this challenge was going to be a lot harder than I initially expected, partially due to dying over 20 times. Also because I couldn't fast travel anywhere. For some reason, configuring the mod that gave me 1 health also broke fast travel, so we're going to have to run on foot to Wayne Priory. This opens me up to numerous existential threats, like mudcraps, wolves that take half a dozen arrows to put down, and I got firmly reacquainted with the concept of gravity. Combining a repetitious leveling system like Oblivion's, where you constantly jump to level athletics, with a guy that can't handle a 2-foot drop, gives you the perfect recipe for an aneurysm. Eventually, we made it to Wayne Priory, where we spoke to Joffrey, who told us where to find Martin, and we picked up a steel bow from his chest. Since leveling Sneak to 100, I'd gained several levels, so I focused on intelligence, agility, and speed, because walking everywhere on foot was about as appealing as stapling my eyelids open. I installed a faster horses mod. Put simply, it turns horses from this into horses from this logo. Slightly immersion breaking, yes, but my immersion was already shattered every time a rat with rabies felt a little peckish. When I arrived at Kvatch, I encountered some of the best voice acting I've ever heard. Seriously, it sounded like Todd Howard was holding his family at gunpoint. Here we came across our first Oblivion gate, and the captain wasted no time sending a civilian into hell to do his job for him.
Help them finish the job.
Playing Oblivion with 1 HP transforms even the most masculine men into whimpering cowards.
What are you talking about? Why am I walking?
If you try to meet your enemies head on, then you'll get turned into a fold-out chair against your will. This means the distance I have on my enemies is directly correlated to my survival rate. Also, this makes the 8 times damage multiplier more likely to hit. If they get close, then we'll have to take advantage of our environment and get to high ground. I came across the last of the captain's men, who immediately tried to bitch it, but I forced him to stay and assured him nothing would happen. We continued on, getting flattened by a giant boulder, which, on the bright side, would have killed me regardless of my health, but actually survived a fireball to the sternum, thanks to the Atronach sign. And by the good grace of the Lord himself, we looted over 100 arrows off a single Dremora scout, then made it to the main tower. Inside, my optimism vanished faster than Bethesda's credibility after Starfield. If outside was the equivalent of a sledgehammer to the face, then inside was a 70-ton Tiger II tank grinding your skull into the earth. To add to our problems, the fire arrows we picked up before were doing fuck all damage, so I devised a plan. Run. If you let your enemies chase you, they'll actually follow you through doors, so I lured them into a more open space. This gives us a way better chance at survival. Alright, it wasn't perfect. I also found out that I had a conjuration spell this entire time. God fucking damn it! So, with our skeleton acting as a distraction, we began the merry-go-round of death, dodging fireballs that singed our eyebrows, and coming within inches of getting my head caved in, all the while pumping out 14 iron arrows to take down a single Dremora. This was becoming a real problem, and proceeding past the lifeless soldier, I checked each room, knowing one tiny oversight meant instant death. Occasionally, I got creative and let the environment run its course. After almost killing the sigil keeper, I choked on my own arrogance while trying to finish him off with the dagger. The good thing about Sneak at 100 is that sometimes you find a sweet spot where your enemies do the fentanyl fold. I grabbed the key and left a man locked in a cage. After all, I came here to close a gate, not start a charity. We made it to the final level, took out the remaining Dremora, and grabbed the sigil stone, closing our very first Oblivion gate. Our job wasn't over though. No, far from it. Our next goal, lift the siege of Kvatch. I stormed the gates alongside the captain and his men, by which I mean I sprinted around frantically while trying to avoid everything that moved. Eventually, we reached the chapel and found Martin, who I promptly informed had a father. Emphasis on the had. What's funny about Martin is the story tells us we have to protect him, but in practice, it's actually quite the opposite. Alongside our new meat shields, we pressed onward through the waves of demonic hellspawn, who clearly mistook me for an American healthcare CEO. We lifted the gates to the castle, and what followed can only be described as an average house party in Finland. I was getting too close to the heat of battle. I needed to do what had served me well many times before, and crouch silently in the corner, remaining undetected, whilst I shot my loads at the unsuspecting hot chick. We sniped the rest of the Atronachs and scamps, and found Count Goldwine lying face down in a pool of his own blood. So I told Savlian, who was so angry with me, that he gave me the clothes off his back. With the siege lifted, we could leave, officially becoming the hero of Kvatch with 1 HP. Before we continue, I have a confession to make. For the past 2 years, I've been using my old pre-built PC as an oven. With just one shitty, worn-out fan inside, it would reach the same temperatures as Earth's molten core. As you can probably imagine, this was not conducive of a healthy gaming experience. That's when I got an Apex gaming PC. These pre-built behemoths come with so much liquid cooling, they could literally extinguish the sun. And now I can watch that happen in Ultra 8K resolution, thanks to the Radeon RX 9070 in their Apex Streamer Plus. Now I no longer have to cook with my PC. Instead, I can use it for what it's intended for. Apex PCs come pre-built, optimized, and specifically designed not to roast a chicken. Use code WINS at checkout and stop cooking food in your PC today. Thanks to Apex Gaming for sponsoring this video. Now, back to dying with 1 HP. After leaving Kvatch, I discovered that we could fly. The Faster Horses mod seemed to make our horses almost invincible. This might be a slight departure from the base game, but seeing this majestic creature spread its wings and turn into a Boeing 747 was just too good for me to let go of. We made it to Wayne Priory, where I was instantly molested by a missionary. Not to worry, Martin and Joffrey were also incredibly skilled gooners. Inside, we discovered
the Amulet of Kings is gone.
We should take Martin to Cloud Ruler Temple, or we could just fuck around, completing errands like a stay-at-home mum. Much like Jeffrey Epstein in an empty prison cell, I had a habit of dying. So it was time to deck myself the fuck out. First, we needed a new bow, so we made our way to this runestone. It gives you access to a bound bow that lasts for 1 in-game hour. But if you fire a couple of arrows, repair the bow, then drop it. After that hour passes, the blessings go away, but the bow remains, giving us almost double the damage. We'd also made it to level 12, maxing out both intelligence and agility, although intelligence means nothing to us if we don't have any magicka at all. The Atronach Stone may give us new leases on life, but it also completely stops magicka regen, and with conjuration being a fairly big part in my strategy, this was a bit of a problem. So we needed to figure out an effective way to regen our magicka. The solution? Crystal meth. These stones completely replenish your magicka reserves, making them the perfect antidote. The only problem? We needed to get some. So we made our way over to Philadelphia, testing out our new bow on the local dealers, but effectiveness was hard to gauge between Martin and Joffrey dishing out instructionals in real time. We did manage to loot some elven arrows, then finally came across a wizard's equivalent of a Bitcoin in 2012. The next stop, Dunbarrow Cove. This was originally a DLC player home, but it's included in the remaster. It's basically filled with a bunch of tough skeletons that you have to clear out, and once you do so, it becomes available. The base skeletons aren't a problem, but this fucker right here was. After getting murdered so many times that I literally started to morph into the wall, I had to change things up. So I sacrificed Martin, lured the captain outside, and in a panic, ran for my life whilst covering him head to toe with 14 arrows. With him deader, Dunbarrow Cove was cleared. The reason for doing this will become apparent later. Also, we were fucking broke because I spent all my hard-earned gold on a spell from a convenient horses mod I installed, only to find out that, like an American with a student loan, I'd been scammed. Not only did these horses ride at excruciatingly slow speeds, but they actually turn into a homicidal Elden Ring boss when you shoot one, because you accidentally summoned it in a hallway and now can't get past. We also picked up an Amulet of Reflection in a random dungeon, giving us a 20% chance to reflect spells back at the caster, effectively raising our spell resistance to 70%. Now that we'd geared up, we could continue the main questline, and took Martin to Cloud Ruler Temple. This is when Steve Buscemi officially became a member of the Blades. It was a strange place. Monks had katanas, and horses mysteriously self-parked, but we have a challenge to complete. So, fly. We made our way to the Imperial City, where I beelined straight to the nearest brothel, barrel. If you weren't already aware, then barrels are the most powerful object in Cyrodiil. They're actually omnipotent beings that transcend space and time. Because dupe. Okay, yes, you might not like me duping shit, but when the main threats to your existence are rats and a flight of stairs, you tend to lose some patience. Also, it's my video. Next, we met up with Boris, killed an assassin, collected 2 books of the Mythic Dawn commentaries, and guilt-tripped to Bosma for the 3rd. We needed to collect the 4th, and the only way to do so was to meet up with a member of the Mythic Dawn. So we battled our way through the sewers and made it to the meet, following along with my pattern of poor decision-making. I insisted on doing the cult meeting myself. When you've got the survivor inevitability of a half-smoked cigarette that is slowly dying out on the sticky floors of an LA strip club. A steel mace entering your cranium has a fairly high mortality rate. Instead of sitting there and listening to his entire speech, I found the more effective method was to get up and shoot him in the face. Once exposed, the key is to not be where they do a 360 wind-up with a greatsword. After taking them out, we looted them and got the final copy of the commentaries. This led us to the location of the Mythic Dawn Shrine, the place where I would finally lose what little remained of my sanity. Before moving on to the shrine, it was about time I took advantage of the second part of this build, Assisted Homicide. With the Welkenstones hotkeyed, I power-leveled Conjuration to 100, then bought the Summon Daedroth spell at the Coral Mages Guild. Now, we can summon a man from Florida to kill our enemies for us. With this, we were ready to take on the shrine. Our goal is to locate and retrieve the Amulet of Kings. There were two ways to do this, the easy way, undercover, or the hard way. Considering we have to keep our prison rags on, we don't have a choice. Now, this part right here was a giant, fumigating pain in my ass. This room had a total of 5 enemies, who I did this much damage to, and they would all be alerted as soon as I took my first shot. To make matters worse, they all had lightning spells, which, if I somehow survived the hit, I'd be incapacitated long enough for them to sink a mace into my ribcage. If I was too slow, I'd be caught. Too fast, and I'd just die anyway. I even tried sniping the furthest enemies. By this point, I'd spent 30 minutes getting turned into a human origami. So I changed up my strategy completely. I snuck down the tunnel first, shot one of them, and immediately called my cousins for backup. Then I sprinted to the end of the tunnel. I think this wall was the reason it worked, because I had enough cover where I could remain undetected. After 2 Daedroths and a fuck ton of arrows, we killed them all. Moving on through the dungeon, Mankar escaped with the Amulet of Kings, and now we had to take out even more of them than before. But luckily, I have a solution.
Cheese. Cheese. Cheese.
You see, if you jump across to this spot right here, then this branch actually blocks most of their attacks, allowing us to shoot them from relative safety. I say relative because, like a DIY vasectomy, this was not foolproof. They also started to push each other off this ledge, effectively killing themselves, because they were chomping at the bit like wild dogs to get a taste of my final remaining hit point. After somehow surviving getting shot by lightning twice and the fall, we put down the rest of them gently. With everyone dead, we freed a sex slave, took the Mysterium Xerxes, and vandalized some local artwork. One of the main benefits of having a giant gator on speed dial is that he's so big that he literally can't make it through doorways. If you use this correctly, he can block entire corridors, forming a protective layer which you can fire arrows in between the gaps. If you use it incorrectly, then he locks you inside a 2x2 room with a member from the Manson family. I pushed through to the last tunnel, dying multiple times to these aggressive cucks and their heat-seeking lightning. But I figured out if I summoned a Daedroth close enough to the entrance, then I could stand back and shoot at their feet. After picking up a ring that has an 8% chance to reflect damage, we made it out. Next, we had to take out a couple of the radicalized locals who were planning several terrorist attacks. Honestly, this was a refreshing change of pace. Just break into their house, rehabilitate them, then report back to Joffrey. Finishing this officially marked the halfway point in the main quest line. From here on out, the quests were going to get a lot harder. So, before we continued, it was time to get the most overpowered, unstoppable, damn near God status upgrade in this entire game, the Adoring Fan. After all, what's a journey without a companion? To do this, we'll have to become the grand champion of the arena by winning 20 fights in a row with 1 HP. Probably the most unnecessary thing I could possibly do, yes, but we get a montage.
Those girls didn't stand a chance. You did it! You beat them, every last one!
I accept the challenge.
makes you the best fighter the arena has ever seen. Name you the new arena grand champion.
The arena now and rest. You earned it.
With that done, we became the grand champion of the arena and recruited the adoring champion, the only companion fit for a man beating the game with a single hit point and living up to his name. He immediately ran away at the first sign of danger. In the next quest, we have to collect a Daedric artifact for Martin to sacrifice. So I rode straight to Meridia's shrine, gave a peace offering of ghost ejaculate, and agreed to slaughter a cave full of necromancers. Clearing this hellhole earns us the Khajiit's ring, a ring that definitely won't be misused to enter women's changing rooms. At first glance, the adoring fan might seem as useless as client testimonials for a funeral parlor, but this little idiot has hidden perks, namely being a convenient meat shield. Inside the hideout, we had to take out 4 powerful necromancers, each with deployable headless zombies. The worst part about this dungeon was the very first room, where you had about a 50% chance of dying before you even finished loading in. If, by some miracle, you survived the spawn camping zombies, there was still another 50% chance you'd sprint and smash your skull into an extremely inconvenient spiked steel ball. Even if you somehow got past all of that, the rest of the dungeon was filled with schizophrenic skeletons and, of course, the necromancers themselves. At this point, I was so irrevocably irritated that I wanted to locate the nearest toaster and stick a fork in it. But, as the old saying goes, if you can't beat 'em all, isolate one and shoot him in the fucking face. This dungeon was made up of a lot of narrow corridors, which we could use to our advantage. If they got past my Daedroth, then we could lure them into a more open area and pick them off safely from a distance. After impaling the final necromancer, we made it out without a scratch, returned to Meridia's shrine, and claimed the Ring of Khajiit. Visually, it makes you invisible, but this was only aesthetic. In reality, it just gives you a 35% chameleon effect and a bonus to speed. Oh, and the dungeon was loaded with loot, and after I sold it, I'm not really sure how else to say it, but I'm kind of a big deal now. I went back to pick up the adoring fan, got distracted gambling, lost, then continued on to Cloud Ruler Temple. Now, if you're wondering how I sacrificed the ring and I'm still invisible, don't. Next, we had to close an Oblivion gate that opened right outside Bruma. Because of our level, the game started spawning harder enemies like Daedroths, Spider Daedra, but perhaps worst of all, tree branches. We battled through Daedra-infested fields and finally reached the main tower. I think my least favourite thing about having 1 HP isn't dying randomly. It's actually doors. Nothing quite matches the pure existential dread of staring into the black of a loading screen, knowing you're about to watch your intestines decorate the walls for the 16th consecutive time. It's kind of like getting hard during a massage. You know it's about to happen, and yet you still can't stop it. The only way I managed to get past was by moving sideways towards the ramp, and then jumping over him and... I was saying, moving sideways towards the ramp, then... We continued upwards, dying to traps, Daedra bitch slaps, and anything else that moved. It wasn't all negative though. I actually got my very first kill with a dagger. We pressed onward, with Captain Bird leading the charge, a man who had clearly ingested so much alcohol that he was physically incapable of feeling pain. It just so happens that being incredibly wasted also makes you an excellent tank. Eventually, we grabbed the Sigil Stone and slammed shut our second Oblivion gate. In order for Martin to open a portal to paradise, we need another 2 items, the Armor of Tiber Septim and a Great Welkin Stone. The former is located in Sankator, guarded by Netherliches, skeleton champions, and other ghost-like creatures. Our objective here was to murder all 4 undead blades, freeing their spirits so they could perform a ritualistic circle jerk to unlock the spell blocking our path. Honestly, these guys were pretty easy to kill. Turns out, an ancient undead blade isn't very threatening when an arrow is piercing his skull. I even felt a little bad for the last guy, who just stood helplessly beneath a pillar and took more headshots than anyone asking what happened to the Epstein files. With all the blades freed, they completed the ritual and unblocked the path, where we picked up the Armor of Tiber Septim.
Nice.
Next, we headed to Miss Karkand to collect the Great Welkin Stone. This dungeon was filled with extremely durable zombies and skeletons. The devs also designed this dungeon with the sole purpose of pissing me off because it was littered with enemies, hiding behind fucking everything. A good way to combat this was to just summon a Daedroth in any rooms you aren't sure about. On the plus side, it was filled with regular Welkin stones. Besides getting no-scoped a couple of times, things went pretty smoothly. I even tested out how many arrows it'd take to kill these dread zombies without using the 8x sneak bonus. The answer was 16. Per zombie. Anyway, I made it to the main chamber and grabbed the Great Welkin Stone. This summoned the King of Miss Karkand, who immediately attacked me like a cop who heard an acorn, stun-locking me into oblivion with lightning. Somehow, not one of these shots actually killed me, and I got my distance. Then shot and killed him like a cop who heard an acorn. Hold on, I just used that. You might think being invisible whilst teabagging is completely pointless, but I'd argue you're missing the point. I know I'm teabagging, and that's all that matters. After taking out the powerful king, I got mugged and killed by a homeless man in a dark alley. Not my finest moment. With the 2 artifacts secured, I made it back to Cloud Ruler Temple on a horse that was programmed with anti-Tesla reverse self-parking technology. Yes, this means it just runs away from you at a brisk pace. We handed them to Martin, and he explained his next plan, gerbaiting an entire city with a full-scale Daedra invasion. This man is a military genius. Before heading out, it was time to finally reveal why I took out all those skeletons in Dunbarrow Cove earlier. You can buy upgrades for this player home in the form of different vendors. After buying the Fletcher upgrade and being at a high enough level, you can purchase some pretty crazy enchanted gear from her, like this Bow of the Blaze, which comes with the added perk of setting your enemies on fire. And for double the fire damage, you can embezzle some enchanted arrows. Up until now, I had just been surviving, but with our new drip, the build was complete. Now, it was the game's turn to survive me. Out of all the quests in Oblivion's main quest line, only one of them is optional, the Allies for Bruma quest. For the trade-off of not having to close an Oblivion gate in literally every major city, we'll have less troops fighting with us at Bruma. I considered this an absolute fucking bargain. So I witnessed a horse fly in its own volition and arrived in Bruma to mild applause, which is enough to convince any group of men to do some shit that probably isn't a good idea. After listening to Martin's pre-game speech, Daedra started pouring out of the gates. We needed to hold them off long enough for the Great Gate to appear. A lot easier said than done, considering we're fighting coked up crocodiles prescribed to Joe Rogan's personal TRT program. All things considered, this was going surprisingly well. However, there was one slight problem. Martin kept dying. Yes, for the first time in this entire playthrough, my own organs getting eviscerated was not the problem. You see, if Martin dies, then we fail the quest and have to try again. After fighting this battle 3 times, I came up with an ingenious solution. A 40-yard dash straight for the portal the moment it opens. Loading into the apocalypse, we have one objective, to reach the Sigil Stone and close the Great Gate before the siege engine makes it through the portal. If we don't close the gate in time, then the world, but more importantly myself, ceases to exist. We get to the first tower, take the elevator up, and get our head caved in. Try again. Kill the guard and make our way up to the second tower. Dodge lightning bolts, paralyze him thanks to our marksman skill hitting 75, effectively turning even Dramora into the elderly. Parkour our way over molten lava that can kill me in one tick. Slap the guard outside the third tower, make it to the top, and get jump scared out of my goddamn mind before my reflexes kick in, and we push him off the edge of our 5th floor apartment. Pull the lever to open the gates, where we shoot and kill every Daedric prick in sight with some definitely not abusive use of game mechanics. Congratulations, we've made it to the main tower. Get jump scared again immediately upon entering by the Sigil Keeper. Kite him around the chamber whilst focusing intently on not getting electrocuted, whilst setting him on fire at every available opportunity. Collect the key and make our way up to the 2nd floor, where this Dramora gets taken out by a trap. Pfft, what a moron. Finally, make it to the last level, incapacitate the guards, then collect the Great Sigil Stone, and close the Great Gate. I might have died multiple times, and had the same heart rate as a 90s stockbroker in a cubicle, but the tame applause, like I'd just given some speech no one listened to, made it all worth it. With the final artifact secured, Martin could open a portal to paradise, for us to take back the Amulet of Kings from Mankar Cameron. If you don't remember who he is, it's the guy that won't shut the fuck up throughout this entire quest, competing for room space with the the voices I already had inside my head. This land might be called paradise. However, it's actually anything but. It's filled with extremely dangerous enemies, and much like Australia, everything here wants to kill you. If you're not familiar with this place, then I'll briefly summarize the lore. There is a complex BDSM relationship going on, where the Ascended Immortals are the subs, and the Daedra are the doms. Continuing down the path, I ran into the first Daedra, who didn't immediately try to decapitate me. Bamboozled about the entire ordeal, I reverted back to my norm, and informed him I was going to murder him. That's when he proceeded to talk a lot of shit for a guy whose entire clan got wiped out by a man with 1 HP. He offered me a choice, and like every decision in my life, I chose violence. This bastard locks onto you straight away, and after coming within inches of meeting my makeup, the fight mostly consisted of me running for my life, with my crocodile deciding to pull in other Atronachs for shits and gigs. After narrowly avoiding the electric chair twice, my croc made up for it by ripping out the prick's spinal cord. I picked up the Bands of the Chosen from his lifeless corpse and headed into the flooded grotto. This cave was filled with the same dangerous enemies as outside, only it was inside. After making it past some storm Atronachs and spider Daedras, we made it to the second only time in this playthrough where I could strip off and wear something other than my starting prison rags. In order to get into the Forbidden Grotto, you literally need to wear these bands. Don't worry, I took them off immediately. In the next part, I died a lot. There were two main themes to my deaths. 1, getting overrun by enemies, and 2, not seeing them until it was too late. So, by taking things a bit slower and actually looking forward instead of jumping headfirst into a metal pole, we could focus on taking them out one at a time. I also pushed this innocent man into molten lava because I found it amusing. This, however, was a mistake. Not because I'd found some semblance of humanity nestled deep within my soul, but because apparently these guys were immortal. So, as he lay burning in the lava, he didn't die, and instead his muffled screams haunted my every step throughout the remainder of the dungeon. Pushing through the Daedra and Menkar's followers, with a total of 3 voices in my head, I came across this strange man who agreed to help us, immediately ran into molten lava, died, then used console cheats to resurrect himself. I got out of the psychosis-inducing cave, and finally made it to Menkar Cameron. This was the hardest fight in the entire campaign, mostly due to it taking place entirely in an enclosed space, with multiple enemies who can kill you with lightning, 360 no-scopes, and even just a good old-fashioned Hulk smash. In total, there were 3 enemies for us to take out. Menkar himself, 2 guards, plus whatever summon Menkar decided to use. Walking up to him would only result in instant lobotomy. Crossing this hallway when shit hit the fan was no better than being in no man's land during trench warfare. The problem was that as soon as combat started, it was a Royal Rumble free-for-all, in which I couldn't really escape. So I decided to change up my strategy and give Menkar some quality JFK treatment. This almost worked, but I couldn't get enough shots in before either a guard pile-drived his longsword into my torso, or I succumbed to a real-life demonstration of natural selection. This wasn't without progress though, because that's when I got the $1 million idea. I could snipe him from behind this pillar, which gave me the same distance, but also the added benefit of staying hidden. Then, in just 2 shots, yes, 2 shots, I killed him, retrieved the Amulet of Kings, and gave it to Martin, who was surrounded by the finest gooners the Blades had to offer. With the Amulet of Kings secured, we safely escorted Martin to the capital. It was time to begin the final quest in Oblivion, and light the dragon fires. Before heading in, I talked to this drug dealer, who specializes in breaking the law. I climbed back onto my stolen horse, at which point he instantaneously grew a conscience, pulled out a dagger, and tried to murder me. The first morally correct thing he's ever done, and they killed him for it. We made our way into the Elder Council chamber, where Martin formally became the Emperor. It was a nice ceremony. Apart from the gate crashes, Oblivion gates had opened all over the city, with thousands of Daedra pouring out. Our only chance was to get Martin to the temple so he could light the dragon fires. Roaming around the streets of the capital during a Daedric invasion at 1 HP tends to result in premature death. So I used ledgers to my advantage and disadvantage. Using the guards as distractions, we pushed through to the temple district, where I died repeatedly. Greatswords, spells, even a gentle breeze was enough to kill me. This was the clusterfuck of the entire run, and for some reason, the AI was drawn to me like an aggressive homeless man when you accidentally make eye contact. In hindsight, just sprinting past all of this shit would have made my life a whole lot easier. We continued on, where Martin stopped time and space to tell me the new game plan. This giant, four-armed dickhead was here, and he didn't want to talk about my car insurance. So we ran through the minefield of Daedra, avoiding getting crushed by Mehrunes Dagon, and made it to the temple. I spoke to Martin, who gave me a quick, "I love you, bro," then sacrificed himself, transforming into a dragon, and curb-stomped Mehrunes Dagon back into the fiery depths of Oblivion. With the Daedric threat neutralized, Steve Buscemi was officially named
Champion of Citadel.
Now I could finally take off these disgusting prisoner's rags and don the Imperial Dragon armor, having officially beaten Oblivion with 1 HP. If you made it this far, then thanks for watching. As always, a massive shout out to the patrons for supporting the channel. You guys are amazing. That's it for this one. I'll see you in the next.